Molly and the Skywalkerz Happily Ever After is really fascinating and I think really well done. This has been on my to watch list for quite a while, and in an effort to watch a lot more Rhea Perlman films, I decided to prioritise this, and I'm glad that I did. This is an animated film from 1985. It's about an hour in length. It's directed by Bill Melendez and Stephen Melendez, written by Bill Scott, with an amazing voice cast. We have Carol Burnett as the narrator. We have Alice Conway, voiced by Carrie Fisher, and her husband Carl Conway, voiced by Henry Winkler, and their daughter Molly, voiced by Cassandra Coblentz. And we also have Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman as George and Rose Johnson, who are the parents of another child in this. And this is all about divorce and the effects that it has on Molly's mental health. And I won't go into too much spoiler detail, but I will mention a couple of specific things that I think they did very well, so I'll talk about those in a moment with a spoiler warning, just in case you don't want to know too many specifics to begin with. And it starts off with Molly's parents acting quite strangely around her, and then she finds out about the divorce quite early on in the film, and then she begins to feel sad, and she doesn't necessarily know why that is to begin with, and she has to process these emotions, and there are various things that potentially help her through this, but it's a very difficult time, and it doesn't sugarcoat anything. And I feel like it's quite brutal at times, but in a way that's very genuine and very honest, and I think comforting. Like many people, my parents went through a divorce when I was probably about Molly's age, actually. And I think this kind of thing could be very reassuring that you're not alone, reassuring that the things you are feeling are very typical in response to this kind of situation. And I think Molly she's a very likable character. That's not to say her behaviours are always perfect or even always justified, but I do think that she's a very well written, very likable character, and I found it very easy to follow her journey and really feel for her and want the best for her. I think this is also great, not just for children going through something similar, but also great for parents who might have to tell their children that they're separating, because it can really help to highlight how a child can respond to this. Some of it might be really obvious, some of it maybe not. So I think that whether you're the parent or the child in this situation, it can be really, really beneficial. The animation style is really delightful, a little rough here and there, but in a way that's rather charming, and we definitely have quite a variety of locations and settings. We have the Skywalkerz up in the treehouse, which is tremendous fun since Carrie Fisher voices in this, and we have the school and of course Molly's home and various other locations, and it's definitely a very well written, well executed narrative with what I consider to be a very genuine depiction of this kind of situation, and I thoroughly recommend it. It isn't the easiest watch in the world. It's easy to follow Molly's journey and to want the best for her, but emotionally it can be a little bit challenging, particularly if you have been through something similar, but I do thoroughly recommend it. I think it's very, very well done. So I will now, with a spoiler warning, mention a few things that I think are particularly well done. And the first thing is the scene in the restaurant. They go out for pizza, and this is where they break the news to Molly that they're getting separated. Now, on the one hand, I personally want to say that I don't think you should tell your child you're getting a divorce in a public place. I think they should be somewhere at home, for example, where they can lash out or cry or respond in any way that they need to. I don't think the setting was the best idea. However, I do think the scenario was very well executed, and I think the dialogue there was exactly what I think it should have been. So yes, I would have liked a different environment for that, but I do feel like it was a very realistic situation. I loved Molly's teacher and what she brought to the story in helping Molly. If you're a teacher and you work with children, I imagine there's a lot of training on how to deal with this kind of situation, but either way, I think this definitely provides a really interesting perspective with a teacher, and I think that that was a really great element to include in the story. And something else that I think was very well done is how Molly affects other children. Without going into too much detail, there's another child in this Molly spends time with, and his parents are arguing, and Molly tells him that's how it starts, and then they're going to get a divorce. And I'm not saying that children who are experiencing a divorce in the household shouldn't talk to their friends about it, but I think it's worth just bearing in mind that if a child is going through this difficult situation, that could negatively affect other children they're around by instilling fear that they're also going to go through a divorce. I don't have a solution for that. I just think that it was a really good thing for the film to include that as a potential scenario as a result of this situation. And I think it was very realistic. I think the whole thing is very realistic. And then you throw in some charming animation and a brilliant voice cast. And honestly, I can't fault it. On the one hand, it's an easy watch because it's very well done. On the other, it's not an easy watch because it's very well done. But with all of that being said, I definitely recommend it. If you have an hour to spare, then I'd say Molly and the Skywalkerz Happily Ever After is definitely worth watching. There is another Molly and the Skywalkerz film that I will be watching. I'm keen to see what it's about. It has an interesting title. I will definitely watch that sooner rather than later. And for now, I'm very happy with Happily Ever After. And I'm very, very happy to recommend it as well.